The opinions expressed on this program represent the viewpoints of individual authors or contributors and do not necessarily reflect those of Troy University. This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're very fortunate tonight to have as our guest an Alabama legend, one of my best friends and longtime associates around the legislature and Alabama's most legendary state senator in our state's history, the Honorable Jabo Waggoner from Jefferson County is our guest today. Jabo, good to have you on the show.
Good to be with you, Steve.
I want to tell our viewers, y'all may already know about it, I wrote Jabo's biography this time last year, so during this last year. It's called Jabo Waggoner, an Alabama political legend. And Jabo and I worked together on this book, and he has been, what prompted me writing the book on Jabo was he is the longest serving legislator in Alabama history. 53rd year, he's in his 53rd year in the Alabama legislature. He came here in 1966. And I love the way he told me when we first started talking about the book. When he came down here in 1966, Lurleen Wallace was elected governor. Many people don't even remember Lurleen being governor, but he had a friend that was in the house named Quentin Bowers, and he drove him down, and Jabo had never been to the Capitol. How were you, 26, 27 when you came down here?
29.
29?
Yeah.
There have been several 20s, but I will say this. You were helped in Jefferson County because it's hard. That day and time, there was no television ads and not way to advertise. Your daddy had been a prominent political person in Birmingham, so he had the same name you did.
That's right.
So I've said this, but I think probably when you first ran at 28 years old, they may have been thinking they voted for your daddy.
May have.
A lot of folks
May have, but it worked either way.
And y'all ran countywide.
Ran countywide.
You know, you don't realize this, folks, but the one man, one vote in '62, or well, sometime in that time changed, so you had to run the district. Everybody got the same number of people, but when Jabo and them first ran from Jefferson County, they ran as at large. So you had to have good name ID.
That's right.
You know, I've said this in the book, that a lot of people, if you looked at the delegation, they either had a prominent daddy in politics, like you or Eddie Hubert Gilmore out in the Bessemer Cutoff, or they owned a car dealership, like Tom Glover. People like that, they had, it was just all about name ID.
Name recognition.
That was what it was, you know. But you won in '66, came down here to the House, and talk about that. What's the memories of that first term when Lurleen was governor? She didn't live but 18 months.
This is true.
That was a sad day, wasn't it?
She was the first governor that I served with. Yeah. Of course, she passed away 2 years into her term. And then Albert Brewer, who was lieutenant governor.
You were close to Brewer, wasn't you?
I was close, yes. I was close to Albert Brewer.
I like Brewer, too. I actually paid for Brewer.
Did you?
Yeah, when he was lieutenant governor, I got to know when he was Speaker of the House. But he was 66, and he came over in '68. And then I've asked you this when we did the book, that real famous 70 governors race with Wallace and Brewer, that was a heck of a race.
It really was. You know.
Yeah, but you were wise. You stayed out of it.
I stayed out of it.
You deep down probably were for Brewer, but you couldn't. You got your own race. Did you have an opponent at that time too?
I don't remember.
You were still running countywide.
Yes, I was. But Albert Brewer and I were very close.
I knew y'all were.
He used me a lot as a young House member, so he and I became very close friends.
Do you know one reason why y'all might have been friends too? He was a good, clean-cut guy and brilliant man. He was Speaker at a young age. I was having lunch with your good friend, President of Faulkner University today, Mitch Henry, and he's such a devout Church of Christ person, and you are too.
Correct.
You've been and you're on Faulkner's board. And that's mentioned in the book, your prominence in the Church of Christ in the state, you and your best friend, Swade. But do you remember this era, and you got your friend Michael Seymour with us today. We're glad Michael came down.
Right.
Who's been your assistant for 20 years and been a stalwart in the state Republican Party for years.
No question.
And was Fob James one of his main cabinet members, but nevertheless, Michael may not know this. You could not be elected in North Alabama, Florence, Tennessee Valley, unless you were Church of Christ. Do you remember that era? And,
I remember.
And Brewer was Church of Christ. He was from Decatur.
Yeah.
And he later in life changed to the Baptist Church.
Did he?
He wound up going to Mountain Brook Baptist Church in his latter years after he was teaching at Cumberland, you know, but Cumberland Law School. But you could not. It was known that because Church of Christ. I'm not saying anything about your denomination, but they were clannish. I mean, they stuck together.
That's right.
And it was like if you weren't Church of Christ, you really would kind of couldn't get elected. Do you remember that era?
There were a lot of members of the Church of Christ in North Alabama and in Tennessee.
The same way it was, because everybody who settled North Alabama, and your people were very indicative of this. Your folks came down from Lynchburg, Tennessee.
Correct.
That's where your roots were, and your granddaddy and all were stout, staunch Church of Christ. But you got that by heritage. But people who settled North Alabama all across that area and as deep down as Birmingham, they just come down from Tennessee. And David Lipscomb was the Nashville was the center of the whole thing. But Tennessee was very dominant Church of Christ.
It really was, yes. And still is to some extent today.
Which reminds me of one of the best stories in the book. Tell our viewers about you being a 13-year-old boy or something. Jabo's great-granddaddy, was he granddaddy or great-granddaddy?
Granddaddy.
Is it Ebron? What's the name of that church up there around Lynchburg?
New Herman.
New Herman, yeah. It was a rural church. Everybody lived in rural areas back then. His granddaddy did. And he wanted you to drive into Birmingham. Your folks were in Birmingham. And tell our viewers about that drive down. That's one of the best stories in the book.
My grandfather had gone into some really bad health, and he could not drive, and my grandmother never had driven. So my father sent me to New Herman, Lynchburg, to take care of my grandparents. He took me out of school.
You about 14?
I was 13 or 14. And I would drive them to the rural church in New Herman.
Well, your ancestors are buried, probably.
Oh, yeah. My ancestors are buried in that church cemetery. But I lived with them for 3 or 4 months. I would drive them to church every Sunday night. And I was just 13 or maybe early 14s. Well, one day my grandfather came to me and said, "We're going to Birmingham." Said, "I want to visit the kids and the grandkids." I said, "Well, Papa, how are we going to get there?" He said, "Well, you're going to drive." I said, "I've driven from the farm to New Herman Church 5 miles away. I've never been on a highway, a real highway. I've been on country roads." He said, "Well, you're going to drive me
to Birmingham."
So we got in this old, I guess it was a Model A. It was a very old vehicle, very old. And, of course, I did not sleep the night before. I was scared. I was going to drive to Birmingham down old Highway 31 through Huntsville, you know, all the way on 31. And but we got in the car and we went through Fayetteville, Tennessee, and on down toward Huntsville, and I was feeling pretty good. I said, maybe I can do this. So lo and behold, I drove them to Birmingham and did not have a wreck, scared to death every mile. And we stayed 3 or 4 days, and I drove them back to the farm. So that was one of the memories of my life that is in the book.
I love it. Folks, we've got a lot of great stories in this book. I hope y'all will get it. You can send me an email and I'll get it to you, or you can get it on Amazon. We've had several book signings. Jabo Waggoner, an Alabama political legend. But I want to get into this. Jabo is, without question, Alabama's most prominent state senator in history, and by far Jefferson County. It'd take 5. Well, the reason I wrote the book is I wrote a column said it'd take decades to tell you all he's done for Jefferson County and the state of Alabama. But the best one, before we run out of time, is he's kind of halfway, if not 3/4, the father of UAB. We had a television show for the University of Alabama down here, and Jabo was on the show, and I asked him a question. I said, "Jabo, as many years you've been in the legislature, what's the most prominent thing you did?" And Jabo thought for a minute, he never thought about it. But in 1975 or something like that, Jabo passed legislation that bought 45 blocks of downtown Birmingham, which is where UAB sits today.
Correct.
Tell our viewers about that. There's 100 different bills you've passed, prominent bills, major bills, safe driving bills, seat belt bills, saved protective life stadium, but you being the father of UAB buying that land, tell the story about that. That our viewers need to know that, and also your life almost transcends in its correlation to the life of Birmingham in the last 52 years. I mean, your career would be almost parallel to the growth of Birmingham changing from a blue-collar steel city to a UAB medical mecca.
Correct.
But you were part of that, so it's apropos you were. You know, you got that land in about 75 or something like that, wasn't it? It was sometime
1975. Dr. Joseph Volker, who was president of the University of Alabama in Birmingham, UAB, he called me to his office, and I was in my third term in the House, a young guy, had never handled any major legislation up until that point. And I went to his office, and he had his lobbyist, Dr. Rudolph Davidson, in the meeting, the three of us. And Dr. Volker said, he called me Mr. Waggoner, I remember that, and I was, a young guy, I thought. He said, I've got some legislation I want you to handle. I said, yes, sir, tell me about it. He said, there's 40 square blocks adjacent to our small campus, and I think the campus was maybe 15 square blocks then. He said, there's 40 square blocks of urban renewal land that I want to buy, and said, it's fixing to be on the open market if I can't acquire that land. And said, we really need it for the growth of UAB. And I said, Dr. Volker, thank you, but I'm a young guy. I think this is above my pay grade. I don't know if I can handle a bill like this. He said, no, you're going to do it. So they had the bill prepared where for $8.5 million, UAB could acquire this 40 blocks. I introduced it, and in a couple of weeks in the House, we had a program called we were going to play baseball. That's when every House member gets his favorite bill and brings it up for debate. Well, I chose my UAB bill as my time at bat, so to speak. And lo and behold, the bill passed on a pretty good vote. I don't recall any negative votes on it. So I said, wow, this is good. So the bill went over to the Senate, and it finally, in a couple of weeks, came out of the committee, and it was on the floor of the Senate. And there was a very prominent state senator from Tuscaloosa named Richard Shelby. He was in his second term in the Alabama Senate. And of course, he was from Tuscaloosa. He wanted the money to go to Tuscaloosa. And he got up and started filibustering. And let me add, Shelby and I have laughed about this. It's been kind of humorous between the two of us. But anyhow, Senator Shelby got up and started filibustering, trying to keep the bill from passing. And well, he got a call from Tuscaloosa, and never knew who that was from. And they told him to sit down. We wanted the money to go to UAB. So he sat down, and the bill passed the Senate. So they were able to acquire that 40 blocks of urban renewal land, and today that land is, I guess, all the academic buildings are on it, and the football stadium, and the basketball arena, and a lot of the offices at UAB are on that land. So, yes, it has had a significant, that was a significant help in developing and enlarging the campus at UAB. And that's probably by far my most important, significant piece of legislation.
Well, you've had a lot of them too. Folks, one of the funniest things that happened in the Senate, and one of the wittiest things I saw happen is about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 2, I don't know. The state Senate was honoring Senator Shelby in his retirement after 36 years in the U.S. Senate. And of course, a lot of the buildings in downtown Birmingham at UAB are named for Shelby, and rightfully so. He got the money for them from Washington for science buildings and high-tech buildings, biomedical buildings and everything all over the UAB. And they gave Shelby accolades for it. And then Jabo was going to speak next, and he says, Shelby, I know a lot of these buildings are named for you on those buildings, but you got to remember that land your buildings on, I got for them. That's my land. And it's true.
I told him his buildings were on my property.
Exactly, that's what it was. Yeah, that's what it is. You know, Jabo has been just such a great citizen, too, of Jefferson County. I mean, this book, we get some of the civic stuff he's done, the stuff he's done for his city of Vestavia. He loves Vestavia. Any of y'all ever travel down 31 by the Vestavia City Hall? They've got a whole big mural and everything of Jabo's career with all great pictures and everything. As soon as you walk into Vestavia City Hall, anyway, he loves Vestavia, and it's obvious what he's done for them is amazing. Liberty Park would not be there without that. All kind of Vestavia couldn't have grown. They're landlocked, you know.
They were landlocked in 1990. I can't remember the date, but Gary Neal Drummond came to me and said, there's this property out here, and it's called Liberty Park, and it's several thousand acres, I think, and said, I want it annexed into Vestavia. Would you handle the legislation? I said, well, sure. So he had the bill drafted with the appropriate land description, and I introduced it, and it passed very easily. And so that's how Liberty Park became part of Vestavia. And the growth at Liberty Park has been tremendous. I mean, there's lots of residential, huge homes, commercial, a school, 2 schools, an elementary and a middle school. So Liberty Park has been a significant reason that Vestavia has grown so much. I
was talking to Bill Baxter the other day, and Baxter always says he lives in Vestavia, and I think, well, wonder what Baxter lives in Vestavia. But he finally don't realize he's building a new house at Liberty Park. That's where he lived, at Liberty Park.
Okay.
So I didn't know he represented the Drummonds as a lawyer.
Oh,
so
did he?
When Gary Neal started that thing, Baxter just said, well, I'm making money off of you, so I ought to, as a lawyer, so I ought to live out at Liberty. So he was real vague. He said, I thought, well, where does he live in Vestavia? But people referred to Liberty Park is where he lived. He and Maria building a new house out there. But what I was going around saying, Jabo's got a great heritage with his family and all, too. And Jabo's got a great legend with his sports interest. Jabo was a star basketball player in college at Auburn and Birmingham Southern, and married his high school sweetheart, Marilyn, and they've been married 66 years. 66 years, Marilyn and Jabo, and the most handsome couple. The beginning of this book, if y'all can get this, John, if y'all can get this picture, that's a good picture right there of Jabo and Marilyn. And when the book, when you first open the book, Jabo Waggoner, I'm a political legend. But the one we're going to use is one with him and Ronald Reagan. Right here, if you can get this one, John. There he is with Ronald Reagan. If y'all can sometimes get the book and look at it, I marvel at that picture because Ronald Reagan is looking at Jabo like, I'm getting to meet Jabo Waggoner. Look at that. Look at Reagan's picture looking at Jabo in that book. Jabo says, am I really meeting Jabo Waggoner? That's the way it looks like in the book, doesn't it, Michael? It looks like, we're going to use that at the first of the book, but the picture with Marilyn in there. But y'all got have 4 children. How many grandchildren? How many great-grandchildren? Can you keep up with all of them?
7 grandchildren, 2 great-grandchildren.
Can you remember all of them's name at Christmas? What do y'all do about Christmas presents and things like that?
Well, it's written on the package, thank goodness. Yeah.
You know, I asked friends of mine. I've only got 2 daughters and 3 grandchildren, and I'm thinking if I had, you got 9 grandchildren, and
7 grands and 2 greats.
But I'd forget their names. I think. You know, I'd forget which one are you. You know, especially when you get a little older. But Marilyn is one of the most beautiful ladies I've ever met, and they're so active in the church, Homewood Church of Christ. We've got a lot of tributes in this book from the Governor Ivy and every major person, Senator Shelby, Senator Katie Britt. Everybody's written tributes, and his family has too. But one of the best ones is, and I don't think he realized it when he did it, Garland Gudger wrote a good one. Here's a good one from different, all your colleagues, the Governor, Agriculture Commissioner, everybody. Will Ainsworth wrote a good one as Lieutenant Governor. But one of the best ones is by Gary Palmer, who's your congressman, has been for 12 years now. You know, and this is typical of you, your outreach in your church, because you're always, not in a pushy way, but asking people to come to visit you at your Homewood Church of Christ. And he talks about that. He was just a little obscure little guy from Haleyville, and you and Marilyn invited him to y'all's church. He says he never forgot that. And that when he wrote his tribute, I thought that was one of the best tributes I thought.
It really was.
I like that one.
Oh, yes.
You know, he's an humble guy.
He is.
He's a good guy, who Palmer is.
Yeah.
He comes on this show sometimes.
Does he?
Yeah, he's got these 2 new counties down here, Tog and Elmore. They changed that 6th district. Jabo ran for that seat when it was everything was Democratic. He ran for a Republican in '84 in the Gingrich landslide. We got some good pictures with him and Newt Gingrich in the book. But Jabo fought the good fight for years in the minority in the state Senate, because you went to the Senate in 90, was it 90? 90, so you were in the House for 17 years, and then now been in the Senate for, would have been 36,
34, 35.
Yeah. So anyway, but you served for half of that time, 2010s when the Republicans took the majority.
Correct.
So you were 20 years out in the wilderness.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, they treated y'all badly sometimes too.
Pretty rough.
I mean, Barron and Sanders and them would run over the Republicans, you know, pretty badly at that time. Now, I'm not trying to say the shoes on the other foot, but sometimes y'all run over the Democrats about the same way now, you know.
Occasionally.
You know, but anyway, but you've been in the majority now for 20 years.
Yeah.
Much more fun, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot more fun.
Jabo's chairman of the Rules Committee. He sets the agenda. Everybody has to come to Jabo. You go out and walk by his door, and every lobbyist in the state's waiting with hat in hand, trying to get their bills on the calendar. And but Jabo he treats them with all respect, and he's just a perfect gentleman to everybody, and he treats them nicely. And he doesn't nothing bothers him. Matter of fact, your daughter talks about that when she talks about her tribute. She says, "I've never seen Daddy get unflappable, you know, about things." But Jabo, I think he likes sports as much as he does politics. I went to Jabo's house one time, and Jabo was in his 80s. We were writing this book, and I got there a little early, and I said, "Marilyn, where's Jabo?" He's over there shooting basketball. He was over at the Vestavia Civic Center shooting basketball, 85 years old.
Yep.
You still do it, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
You walk every day, don't you?
I go to the Civic Center about every day that I'm in Birmingham. Yes.
Well, folks, he's a legend, and we appreciate him taking time to be with us. He's got to get back to the State House. He's got an important bill. He's got to set the agenda for tomorrow, and he's got to go through who all's going to be on what bills, and we just thank him. This is the getting down the lick log of the session. What bill you got coming up at 3? You got a personal bill you interested in at 3 o'clock. You try to get.
Yeah.
What's you working on?
Well, it's really a Coleman County bill that Senator Gudger asked me to handle. So.
He's doing a good job as pro tem.
Oh, he's doing a good job.
He really is. Everybody likes Garland.
Oh, yeah. He's a likable man.
He loves you. Remember that book signing for one of the first we had in Vestavia?
Yeah.
He drove down from Coleman for it.
That's correct.
He thought that was going to be the big one.
Yeah.
Folks, we had a really, really big book signing at the Capitol. That was a big night, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
It wasn't.
Signed several hundred books.
No, and you weren't even tired.
No.
I was worn out. You know, we didn't stop for 3 hours.
I know.
And then we had people say, well, I didn't have a chance to sign my book. We had to do about 5 or 10 after that, you know. We'll probably have some more. I think there may be another one at the Sports Hall of Fame coming down the road.
Right.
I think Ashley Curry wants to have another one in Vestavia. So we'll get this book out. It's been getting out to a lot of people who like politics in the state. And if y'all want to get a copy, just send me an email. I get you one, and then you get them on Amazon. But I'm glad we did this because Jabo Waggoner is probably the greatest state senator in state history. It's hard to say the state history, but facts are facts, y'all. Ain't nobody been there 53 years like Jabo. Same way Shelby. Y'all can argue that Shelby's been the greatest U.S. senator, but he's the longest serving one, I guarantee you, 36 years. Shelby's doing fine, by the way.
Is he? Great.
Yeah. He's 90 years old, and I talk to him periodically. He's proud of Katie Britt. You know, he really was proud of getting her in the Senate.
She's doing a good job.
She really is. Well, Jabo and Marilyn Waggoner are state treasurers, and we really thank him for taking time out of his schedule. He's got to get back over to the State House. He's right down the lick log of the session, only about 5 or 6 days left. They're trying to get everything out, and he's chairman of rules. And we thank Michael Ciamara for coming down with him and always being there for him over these last, how long you and Michael been together? 10 or 15 years now, probably?
At least, probably longer.
Yeah. Alabama legend, Jabo Waggoner, y'all. We thank Jabo for taking time to be with us, and we thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank you very much.
This has been Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, a production of Troy University Television. Opinions expressed on this program are not necessarily those of Troy University, its administration, faculty, staff, or students.